Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's your host, Crander Q, aka my real name, and welcome to another episode of Friends of the Squared Circle. And we want to just plug our sponsors here quick, get them out of the way. Darren Corbin. Darren Corbin is a sponsor here you can find him at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Yes, Darren Corbin is on TikTok. Another great way to support Darren and everything that he does is at patreon.com/Darren Corbin, where tiers start at just $1. Also, got to give a huge shout out to Superior Creations. As you can see, we got some custom tumblers there of Eric Cannon and Darren Corbin. Two beautiful tumblers there. You can be as cool as Joey and Sierra there and get your custom tumblers at facebook.com/Superior Creations. MN there. And a huge shout out to the boys at 13 Cards Subject to Change. We got Zach, Leroy with the second place beard, and Jesse. Give him a like on all social media there at 13 Cards Subject to Change. I wouldn't be where I'm at without those boys. How you doing, Mo? Welcome to the show.
I am doing well. You got some great advertisers there. Darren is everywhere, it seems like, and tumblers. I don't have a tumbler. I want a tumbler.
Well, I can hopefully throw a quick little edit together for you, and we can get you on one of those tumblers. So, because just like a Russian doll, I am totally full of myself. So
I get it. We all are. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing great. We talked a little bit off camera. I got some ceiling damage. That's why I have two doors behind me. So we need to ignore that. My buddy Randy is a constant pain in my ass. He made us this little championship belt to remind everybody he has the highest views in Friends of the Squared Circle with Alex. So I have to show off the belt. I'm sure he's going to critique that I'm sitting next to a couple doors, but, I am adorable. So horrible joke there to get that out of the way.
I like it.
Yeah.
And you're making the best of a bad situation.
Yep.
It's I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you have interior structural damage. So
yes,
you don't even do a show and still, be able to focus on it. That's impressive.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we're just going to dive into this. What are some of your earliest wrestling memories? Wow, Randy's going to eat me apart right away.
So I was a collector my whole life, as you could probably guess by the background. But back when I was a kid, elementary age, it was definitely more of the Marvel Secret Wars and the DC superhero sort of stuff, like the chintzier figures. But I had a friend who was big into pro wrestling. My parents, I don't know if they thought it was too violent, if they were worried I'd get addicted to it like everything else I seemed to discover back at that age. But he liked pro wrestling. I wasn't allowed to watch it for whatever reason. But, elementary age, hey, you want to sleep over? We can watch movies. We can do this. Sure. And the first time I stayed over, first time I'd ever visited his place, and his whole room is nothing but pro wrestling stuff. It's like, posters of Earthquake and Typhoon and Hulk Hogan and the $1 Million Man, and he had the wrestling buddies. And I'm like, what is this world that you have welcomed me into? And then we watched some show on VHS to date myself. I watched some pay-per-view on VHS. And from that moment, I was hooked. I loved the over-the-top personalities. And frankly, I still do.
Do you remember any of the characters that stood out before you kind of got into it? Was it like the colors, their mannerisms, the moves?
So, I mean, it all goes back to the Macho Man, Randy Savage. He was so larger than life. And the fact that you never saw him repeat an outfit, it was always something wild, absurd. And later in life, I started to truly appreciate how good he was in the ring as well. I mean, as a kid, it was just kind of the characters and the mannerisms, the over-the-top nature. But later in life, I was able to respect him as a competitor. Of course, I loved the Macho Man, Hulk Hogan as a kid. Who didn't love him? $1 Million Man. Really kind of the heavies. The main event scene really got my attention. Then you start going into the mid-card a little bit with like the Big Boss Man and some of those guys. But I loved them. The Bushwhackers. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Gotta love the Bushwhackers. So you mentioned Savage there. Was there any, I want to say how I want to word this, but you had to think that man was crazy. Just the way he talked, the way he had his delivery. And for people that know, That's obviously not his real, but he was really committed to that shtick, kind of like Hogan was back in the day.
I mean, I've been privileged enough to be able to have worked alongside and interviewed a lot of wrestlers and sports entertainers over the decades.
Mhm.
And they all say Macho was Macho. That very rarely did you actually ever get to experience him away from the Macho Man gimmick. And that included his voice. You know, I
Mhm.
worked with the WWE Hall of Famer on a podcast for a couple of years, and he said that he'd never heard the Macho Man out of his voice.
Yeah.
It was always, ooh, yeah. It was always over the top, ready to go.
Yeah, I think I've seen one short video where he's just kind of conducting himself, I guess you would say normal, and it
Mhm.
was just kind of like Larry the Cable Guy. You're just like, this isn't the same thing that I remember.
And
Um,
it's jaw dropping. It's eye opening
mhm.
when you
Yep.
actually experience someone like that. When you experience someone, or at least you know someone, because they're so over the top, they have a gimmick, they have a shtick, and then when you encounter them without it, you don't know what to do. Another
Mhm.
example, not pro wrestling for me, would be Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh, yep.
Gilbert Gottfried, Aflac, and Yago from Aladdin,
Mhm.
always squints his eyes and always talks in a high voice. And I got to interact with him when he's opening his eyes fully and talking normal, and I didn't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it
RIP
was
right
surreal.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, now you mentioned Hogan and Macho Man. Were you a huge Mega Powers fan? Did you like the angle with Miss Elizabeth? Did it kind of slay you one or
Of
skirt?
course. Of
You know,
course. Yeah. And not to cut you off there, but yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was just in awe of all of it. Really, all of this going back. How are they fighting over a woman that's
Mhm.
Macho's woman? And oh, Macho Man, you're taking this all wrong. Like I was sucked in, and yeah, it
Mhm.
took a couple years for me to realize it was fake. But you know what? By that point, I didn't care. So I liked all those hokey storylines, and as
Mhm.
a kid, it was even better.
Like he leaves Hogan out in the ring, and you're like, "What are you doing? He needs your help." And then he
Snake
carries Miss
bite for
Elizabeth.
big. I mean, like all of that
Mhm.
stuff. It's just like, what are they doing? I didn't know this entertainment existed. I love it. I need more of it.
Yeah, it definitely just sucked you in as a kid. Uh, and now, like we always use the fake word. Yes, we know wrestling is fake, but I mean, there's still moments that I get sucked in. So how
Mhm.
old were you about when you kind of started getting into wrestling again? What was your age again?
So I really started paying attention probably around third or fourth grade.
Okay.
So 8, 9, 10, around there somewhere. I don't know the exact age. And I followed casually for a while because, again, I wasn't really supposed to watch it at home. So,
Hmm.
I may not have clicked on consistently like I'd wanted to, but I try to keep up. But then the Attitude Era hit, a couple years later. And from there, me and my friends just dove right in. And I can't imagine not being a wrestling fan during the like I
Right.
can't imagine growing up as a teenager with my core group of friends not having that Attitude Era of wrestling, that popularity, the Goldberg, the NWO, DX, and just the constant signs everywhere. Like my teenage years would have sucked without the Attitude Era.
Hmm.
And nothing against my teenage years. It's just like
Right.
I can't imagine my life without that era. That era just brought me back in, and I've been consistent ever since.
And you brought up your friends used to watch it with you in those teenage years. Did you guys ever get in trouble at school for doing the DX suck it? Did you guys kind of have like um, man, I am stumbling today. I
That's
was
all
all
right.
prepared.
Hey,
When you guys had like different tastes, like one guy was, say a Triple H guy,
oh yeah,
and then the other guy was a Bret Hart stan. Like did you guys have those rivalries
oh yeah,
within yourselves? Holy cow!
oh yeah. So again, I'm gonna date myself here. Like things are different back in the day. If
Mhm.
you're a younger viewer of this show, you don't understand the struggle we had to be able to watch all of this stuff. So on a Monday night, the big screen typically was on WWF Raw.
Mhm.
And then we had a smaller TV
Okay.
that we would bring into the room that was on WCW. So then we would flip
Mhm.
what was on depending on who the star was on WCW. So we had one friend that was a huge Goldberg mark. I never been a big Goldberg fan, but one of my friends was. So when
Mhm.
Goldberg was on, we had to flip over for 2-3 minutes because that's how long his whole
Yep.
segment would last. I was a huge Scott Steiner fan, especially the
Oh,
Big
okay.
Papa Pump, the Big Bad Booty Daddy. You know, like, so if he was on cutting a promo, it doesn't matter who's on Raw. We're
Yep.
flipping over to Steiner. And so we would do that. We would absolutely do that. And it was constant flipping, constant arguing. We probably got more in trouble at home with that. We always went to this one friend's house. There'd be like 5, 6, 7 of us that would gather for wrestling on Monday nights. And he had a single mom. And so I think we were a bit much to deal with. So we got in trouble with her more than we got in trouble at school for the suckets.
Now, were you more, you mentioned Scott Steiner. Did you lean more towards WCW or did you prefer WWF and just like Scott Steiner?
We actually preferred, and I say we as a group, myself definitely preferred WWF, WWE at the time.
Okay.
But there were people I liked and respected, but it's like you grew up. You saw these stars as a kid, and I was still a kid. I was a teenager, but you know, like liking some of those guys was elementary school thing to do. You know, like that's like the mentality you have. But really, WWF with The Rock, Stone Cold causing trouble all the time, DX, it just felt fresh. It felt new. It felt me. You know, it felt like my generation.
So I know a lot of people prefer that the Attitude Era was the best era ever. Me personally, we always say, like, you know, if you didn't have the Takers, the Michaels, and those guys, the rest of that show was just, in a sense, garbage. Not to, you know, take away from what the men and women did, but do you feel like the Attitude Era is the best era?
The best era, no. Was it the most popular? Yes. I don't think anybody can argue the popularity of it, but it is easy to glamorize nostalgia and to be able to wax ecstatic and say, hey, look at that. It was such a great show, but a 3-hour Raw did have a lot of painful segments in it. But you remember Stone Cold crashing the arena in whatever vehicle he had that week. And you remember the moments, but if you remember the show, it was pretty rough at times.
Yeah. And me personally, I've talked on earlier episodes, which you could check out on YouTube, everybody. Whereas I was more a WCW kid because I thought the NWO was super cool, and then kind of invading, you know. And I told Kevin Nash, name dropping here, where he threw Rey Mysterio like a dart. Like that's one of the like 5 moments in wrestling that I can, you know, vividly remember that I was shaken up about. Like, holy cow! Like, you know, most people remember Austin busting into Brian Pillman's house. I remember Lawn Dart Mysterio, you know, just, you know, and he got a chuckle out of that when I told him, thanks for making my childhood awesome. And his response was, thanks for making me rich, kid, you know. So.
Absolutely. There's so many memories I'm sure you and I can go through when it comes to our childhood and teenage years and all that. For me, I was a huge Jerichoholic in WCW, to go back all the way back then with Ralphus and his Jericho personal security and his list of names and how he always got all the competitor names wrong. I mean, like, you know, we see Jericho still going decades later and still working with young talent and making a difference. I don't know who the rest would be, but Jericho's probably on my Mount Rushmore since we showed that picture earlier. Jericho's probably on my Mount Rushmore of all time.
Yeah, I love Jericho. I know our friends at 13 Cards Subject to Change cannot stand him because obviously he's just kind of pushes their buttons. The whole wizard thing on AEW, how he's still around. They don't like his music. I absolutely love Fozzy. I don't agree with some political choices, but I try to just remember.
You
like
don't need those people in your life, by the way. You can.
You hear that, Jesse? We don't need you in my life.
You don't need that negativity.
I always take little pop shots at the guys over there because then it's fun. Then they talk about me as well.
As you should.
One thing you mentioned, Jericho, like, you know, when he did the 1,001 holds, I always just laugh at that meme and that promo. Yep. And you gave me a great idea for a a couple's Halloween costume for Amy and I. Randy, take a shot. That's another little joke on our podcast here. I could totally pull off Rufus, and she could be Jericho. I got the body for that. So
that. Absolutely.
She said no to Goldust and Terry, so maybe I can, get more funny with this one.
For this one anyway.
Yes, Randy, we are talking about Amy. That is another shot for you. We almost killed him on one episode. We'll still try to keep him sober this episode, but who knows? So, as you got older, and you're still a wrestling fan, how did that lead to what you do now? Now, we talked off camera about how you were doing cons, and you mentioned you had a show with a Hall of Famer. What led to you getting to that point? I'm sure you went to school, or did you just fall into it by accident? What was your career path there?
A little bit of both, I suppose you could say there. I've been very fortunate. I have been very lucky with how the career in relation to pro wrestling has worked out. So I've been in entertainment, mainly broadcasting, for 21 years now. I've also often heard you have a radio voice. Well, I got into radio. And at one of the stations, I've never been shy. I've never been quiet about my love of pro wrestling. So at one of the stations, my boss used to work with a guy who then was the head of WWE ticket sales for like the Northeast region or something.
Okay.
And this guy asked, and again, technology was different back in 2003, 2004. He asked if I could create a voicemail for him with the ding, 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 an announcer sort of, you've reached the voicemail of da da da, and he just asked for a couple different examples, and I'm like, sure, I don't mind doing it. And I just wanted the contact. That's all I wanted. It's just like, I'll do it for him. I know the guy, so maybe if I need, if there's a big event coming up, like, hey, remember when I made that for you? Could you get me front of the line for these tickets? Well, he did me 1 better, 10 better, 100 better. And for the next 5 years, any event I wanted to go to, he would hook me and my friends up for free.
Nice.
And these aren't like nosebleeds, like the cheap seats. These would be on the floor, take your chair home with you seats.
Oh, nice. That's a good friend. Randy, you should try to do that for me.
So it was great. And he would join us. Like, he wanted to be around, like, he enjoyed going to the shows, but like nobody else in his life liked wrestling. Like, the wife he had wanted nothing to do with it. So he would sit with me and my friends, and we would just hoot and holler from the third or fourth row, and just have a blast. And this was any event, Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views, live events. So I was pretty fortunate about that. And then I moved on from that station. He moved on from that job. I think he went to UFC, actually. And working another radio station, I started going to Comic Cons. I enjoyed that as a kid, started doing it again as an adult. And then I'm like, why am I paying to go to Comic Con? I'm in the media. I should go for free. This makes me sound snobbish, and maybe I am, but they should, let me go there for free, and I could interview celebrities. So I started doing that for a couple of years. And then I'm like, wonder if I can get them to pay me to be here. So I started working part-time for Wizard World as a moderator, working CM Punk's panels, and then non-wrestling ones, of course. And then eventually, a couple months after that, what can I do to be full-time? And so I just kept putting these things out into the universe. And I do believe they came back, and I ended up being full-time at Wizard World about 6 months later, moved to California, and for about 5 years, national touring all across the states. And because of my love of WWE, I became the wrestling guy on staff. And at Wizard World, there was always going to be at least one wrestler per show. And they're like, well, we know you can talk because of your radio background. We know you don't get starstruck, so we're just going to keep putting you on stage. So I got to work with the Pages all the time, Charlotte Flair. I got to work with Roman Reigns. I was John Cena's first ever Q&A.
Oh, nice. Reagan Reigns.
The list goes on. I mean, on my birthday once, I had Ric Flair sing me happy birthday on stage with his daughter. I'm like, there are mind-blowing moments that I still, years later, feel are surreal, and I can't fathom that this is my life. This has been my life. Working with the Big Show, working with Natalia and Ricky Steamboat and Daniel Bryan, Daniel Bryanson, Bryan Daniels, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Dolph Ziggler, AJ Lee, like it's led to a lot of great moments. I left Wizard World a couple years ago, got back into radio, and I just still had good connections in the wrestling industry.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, a person I used to work with, a gal Rachel, was still working. I worked with her at Wizard World. She still does cons as what's called like a celebrity handler, like the person that's at the table with the celebrity, taking their money so they don't have to do it, and just, keeping the line organized. She had worked with Devon Dudley, who is now a backstage producer for WWE, NXT now specifically, but at the time he was doing Raw and SmackDown. And he had made a comment to her over the weekend at whatever show it was, saying, I want to do a podcast. I'd like to be on a podcast. He meant one show.
Oh, okay.
But she took that as he wants his own show. Because you have seen, like, so many wrestlers have their own podcasts now. I mean, so she started a group conversation. Devon was a little reluctant at first, but I just kept being persistent. I've been doing my own wrestling podcast since 2005. So it's not like I was new or foreign to the concept. So I just kept pushing him. He broke down, and for about 2 years, we had a show, Table Talk, that I looked forward to each and every single week because I never knew what was going to happen.
Definitely have to get those links and stuff for me so we can spread some more words about you.
We don't do it anymore. We wrapped up earlier this year, and I took a break from weekly podcasts after 17 years. I decided, you know what? Maybe I don't need to do one every week anymore. I'll probably get back to it eventually, but I'm enjoying the break right now. But all the former episodes are available at YouTube/Wrestling Audio.
There you go. See, now I thought this was going to be once a month thing just to kind of try it out. And then it just kept snowballing, and now it seems it's a weekly thing. I have a spin-off, and it's just like, hoofda, and then like when we talked about the roof here, holy cow, like it's like, how do I get everything organized, get everything situated, revamp the spot, but things are working. You're here, I'm here. So, and back to the Comic-Con, that's actually where you and I first crossed paths. I remember going to one of your Q&As. I believe it was just you that time. And then later, I think the next day you had the wrestler panel. So I went to that one first, and I think it was just more just chatting about wrestling. And I brought up how I was a huge Goldust fan and a Dusty fan, and you were like clowning on me through the whole thing. And I'm thinking like, who is this guy? And I kept raising my hand just so I could, send something back, and at the end of the show, it was so great. You actually welcomed me up for a free prize, even though the girl took the Charlotte autograph from me just before I got up there. But and now,
do you remember which one you went with?
I think I grabbed Sheamus that one. I love Sheamus a lot too. So he's another one on my list that I want to meet. And I remember just this past week, my buddy was down there for the Rochester show, and he got a selfie with Sheamus. And I told the fiance, Randy, take a shot. That's why I'm bringing the story up. I'm done talking to Matt because he met Sheamus. So Matt's a good buddy. He's been on the show. So.
I have so many stories about all of those stars. I worked with Sheamus twice at Comic-Con.
Nice.
One in Sacramento, one in Philadelphia, I think.
Okay.
Sacramento was the first one. And the reason I remember that is because back then, like, it took half of my run in Wizard World to finally gain WWE's trust.
Oh, okay.
Like, they did a deep dive search to allow me to be a moderator. Like, they went through my Twitter and they found, how there's a cancel culture where James Gunn had that bad tweet 11 years ago or whatever. They found one where I made fun of Randy Orton. And they like, well, if we ever bring Randy Orton to a show, you're not doing it. Like, they were worried about it. But anyway, I remember this was like the last time, like one of the last shows that I had to get their approval of questions ahead of time, which is common in entertainment. A lot of stars aren't comfortable with the Q&A, so they like to know what to expect. And so one of them was like, I was just filling out stuff because I never followed that list anyway. But one of them was like, Sheamus, why do you hate the sun? And I remember that actually pissed off my WWE rep. Like, no, he's got this long story. I'm like, it's a joke. It's a joke. I'm not seriously gonna ask about that. But he was warm and welcoming. He was great. And then I saw him again 2 years later, and I'm like, he's not gonna know who I am. These stars meet thousands of people a week. And he walks right up and he gives me this huge bear hug. And Sheamus like, hey, how's it going, Mo? How's everything been? And he's asking about my personal life, stuff that we talked about in that panel 2 years ago that he's remembering. And I'm like, this is amazing. You very rarely find a person like this, much less a celebrity. So when you finally get to meet Sheamus, he's not going to disappoint.
Perfect. And I know, like, I'm going to totally name drop here. One of our sponsors here at Friends of the Squared Circle, Darren Corbin. He's just like that with everybody that comes through. And then to name drop, and even, bigger star, no offense to Darren here, but like Luke Hawk. I've met him 3 to 5 times. Every time he's asking what's up. And I remember I was losing weight there. Got to get back on that track. That's a long story. Anywho, and I was telling him about that on a post, and then like the first thing he says to me when I see him at the show at the casino, hey, how's that weight loss going? I was like, oh, pretty good. I'm like surprised that about that, because I didn't, really share too much about it, but great guy.
It's amazing when anybody remembers, but especially somebody is busy and distracted by life.
And I feel like special because he always will like comment back to me on Instagram, or he'll, like every comment that I put out there, or when I do these silly little edits, what you've seen, he sends me, a cool message. But I'm sure you recognize him once you dive into some of your favorite movies, like Wolverine. He's the guy that gets the blades through the skull. He gets stabbed by the Rock in Fast and the Furious. He actually plays Stone Cold in the Young Rock. So give a little bit of who Luke Hawk is if you don't know the wrestling.
The actor a month ago who plays Vince McMahon in Young Rock, and I've become friends with Adam now.
Perfect. Look at it. It's all about name dropping.
Your guest and my guest on the same show so they can battle each other.
I'm definitely trying to get Luke for sure. I've messaged him. He said to send an email. And I'm still I want to get a little bit more practice under my belt before I get him on. You are also one of my big fish, so
really?
There's a huge compliment for you. Not to sound like an ass by saying that, but I've been hoping to get you on because your connections, and then it's all about who to get to the next level. So
you and I will talk afterwards. I got a name or two I can help you out with.
Perfect. Now back to pro wrestling, everybody, as we're talking shop here. I don't want to bring up Andy. Randy, take another shot. He's gonna hate me. But
you lush.
So we kind of glazed over your first live event. Do you remember your first live event that you had as a kid or a teenager?
So I don't remember the first event. Like, for some reason, my mind always goes back. Like, I watched for a while, but I was never really good at saving money. I was very good at spending it. I don't know if that theme continued in life or not. But for some reason, the first event I remember was a pay-per-view. Like, I knew I went to a live event before then, but I don't remember a damn thing about it. Maybe I was just so overwhelmed. I don't know. But my first event was No Mercy 99. Which is best known for being the ladder match between Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys, the part of the Terry Invitational Tournament, or if you will, the TIT.
Okay.
And then that was Chyna's last appearance. Jeff Jarrett's last appearance in WWF before dropping the IC title to Chyna. And then it was Mick Foley versus Val Venus over the burning of a book. That was like the big thing. Nosebleed seats, horrible view, but man, did I have a blast there.
Yeah, I remember one of my first live events was, just a indie show that my uncle took me to. But my first WWE show, I was just so nervous. I don't like the big crowds at the time because of all the things that were going on in the world. And we went to Bragging Rights, me and my buddy Wade, and like that's probably one of my favorite pay-per-views. Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler opened up the show, just a clinic. I got to see a Buried Alive match at my first pro, wrestling thing.
Awesome.
So I was like, wait, we got to go over. And so I get a picture by where they're going to do the thing. And Kane and Taker are fighting towards us, and they're about ready to come up the steps. And I'm all like, I'm going to get on camera. That's my goal, is to be on camera, wave my signs around, and they go up the other staircase. So I was very disappointed by that, but that's still one of the few that I will still throw on because it just holds that sentimental value. And
of course,
everybody else will probably rate the matches as crap, but I thought it was great because you got to see all the stars, Rey Mysterio, Edge. But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite pay-per-views to go back and look at. So.
Oh, absolutely. Like, do you ever, I don't know how many events you've been to, but I know you go to a lot of local shows. Do you ever come across a memory, come across a story or a picture, and you realize that you forgot that you were there, that you've been to so many shows that you're starting to forget you've been to certain ones?
I mean, that happens with like the indie stuff because I'm all like, oh, this match happened. They're like, no, that wasn't the match, Cal. It was, say, I'm thinking it's Arya Daivari versus Eric Cannon. And in reality, it was Eric Cannon, versus someone else. And it's like, oh, okay. So, trying to get all these WrestlePaloozas, to line up. I've seen so many Darren Corbin and Eric Cannon matches that I can't even tell you who won half of them, which is usually Darren Corbin. That's a plug to my boy. But it's just, I'm an indie guy. That's what I love the most. I love meeting new people at shows, like, again, hence the name, Friends of the Squared Circle. That's why we're here, so I can make more friends and share this wrestling community. But yeah, there's some that just blur together, and I'm just like, I think I went to that one, and then I see the poster sitting in my tote, like, okay, I was at that one, So
I hear you. Okay, I ask because I go through that a lot. I'll see a clip on the WWE network. I'm like, oh yeah, I was at that show. Oh man, how do I not remember? But that's to me a sign of a very spoiled good life right there.
Yeah. And it's just like, with the Elimination Chamber, I can't tell you half the matches on there, but I remember every sign that I brought. And I still have the one from the Usos versus D-Generation X, where I actually got on camera. You don't get to see my ugly face. They would have blurred that out. But you get to see my Uso sign. I got that, out in the living room now that it's not hanging up in the room because of the stuff. But, and I got signed by the referee, little Nate. So I was like, yep, keeping that forever just because it's, iconic that I got it on the pay-per-view and I got it autographed. So
very nice. Very nice.
Even though the female security guard, probably could have whooped my ass when I ran over there and handed him everything. So
be thankful she didn't, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the wrestler that I can compare it to is the NXT star. She was just wrestling.
She part of the tag
Legend, I think it is, or something.
Yeah, okay, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I was scared. I was just like, all right, I'm out of here. Sorry, because we were just farther back. So. I'm sure we all remember that 90s bodybuilder guy that was running around WWE events back in the day of security with his leather hat and his tight WWE shirt. So
I tried to block him out of my memory, but here you go, bringing him roaring back in. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm probably that crazy fan too that I'm going to plug myself here. Of course, this is my show. Where the indie shows, I've always got a sign that gets ripped up, usually front row, because I'm cool. But
and you got a very recognizable, distinguishable red beard there, and that's not a bad thing. To me, that's an awesome thing. One, beards are great, but then the color and everything, it just makes you stand out. That's not a bad thing.
So everybody always gives me, was it because of this wrestler that you grew it out? Now I want to see who you thought was the reason. See if you get the same reference. Because I used to be trimmed and nice looking like you, but then I decided to get awesome and grow a really big beard.
Are you saying I'm not awesome because I don't?
Well, I just have a big beard, so I like to break.
I mean, you remind me of Erica Rowan, but obviously that would have been that's probably a little too new for your inspiration there. I'm going to say Hillbilly Jim.
I'm not that old. No, it was actually because of Daniel Bryan that I started growing it out.
Right.
And then we used to get, the Wyatts all the time. And my buddy Bob, who we got to get on this show, We were at that
Matt used to
elimination.
be Otis.
Yeah. Yes. I love Otis. Don't want to get too far into that because my friend Randy will rip me to shreds if I go on my fandom about that.
Damn it, Randy.
But yeah, we were at that pay-per-view, and then everybody was like, "Oh, it must be Wyatt fans." Yeah, but we're kind of rooting for the Shield tonight, because they were new, they were hot, So
Yeah, that's what I love about wrestling fans
Mhm.
is that they'll take these playful shots. You talked about how I gave it to you at the panel years
Mhm.
ago. It's like you could do this playful trash talking. It's playful banter
Yep.
because everybody knows it's just that.
Yep.
So when I say that you're my favorite Otis looking host, I mean it.
And it's a great thing, about these adventures as I go back to meeting people. Like we met in Chicago, like at a panel, and then I believe I saw you again in Madison when you had Kevin Nash up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy how this wrestling world works. And that's why I like the title of my show is Friends of the Squared Circle, but it's also because I'm building this community of more friends. I met a guy, who is our co-host, Chad, just by talking wrestling, online. And now he's on a podcast with me, and we finally met after 6 years of talking down at WrestleCon during the pandemic.
Yep.
And then I met my buddy Robert and, you, and then Peter, he was actually at that Chicago Comic-Con. He was dressed up as the $1 Million Man.
Yep.
And he was sitting in front of me, and now him and I talk, so it's crazy how this wrestling world brings people together, so we do have some toxic fans, but yeah.
It does bring fans together.
Yep.
Even if you disagree, even if you were going for the Wyatts and people were going for the Shield, it's like there's a camaraderie there where you don't have that in a lot of sports. Like you can't go, for me, I'm in Atlanta, but I'm a Phoenix Suns fan. I can't go to a Hawks game and have a great rapport with Hawks fans as a Suns fan. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You trash talk each other and you kind of hope your team loses, because if their team loses, you're fearful for your safety.
Yeah. And nowadays with people at any sporting event, it's always, a fight breaks out because their team lost or their team won, and they're trash talking everybody on the way out. Wrestling is just like, oh man, I can't believe you, and you're still talking to that person next to you wearing that opposite shirt, because
or
someone is in love with what you love,
and then they're out of control. It's just not good.
Yep. I don't know how many videos I see on Facebook of people fighting at sporting events. It's like, why even go? Why spend the $300 to $400 on a ticket?
And then never be invited back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen some wrestling fights at shows, but never anybody getting into it for real. So
not really.
So before we get you out of here, one thing I want to kind of just throw at you, it's kind of a surprise question. What's the craziest thing that you can kind of remember from being in this business or as a fan in wrestling? Like the craziest moment you can think of?
Oh, I got those. People they ask a lot of follow-up questions, and I'll tell you right now, I will not answer any follow-up questions, but I got a lap dance from Paige once.
Oh, okay.
Des Moines, Iowa. This was said Des Moines, Iowa. There was a group of us partying. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. She's like, let's go to a strip club. And I was exhausted. I wanted to go back to the hotel room and sleep. Like, I worked with Paige so often, this happened, but she's like, let's go to a strip club. And I'm like, fine, whatever. Okay. And we were there till like 4 in the morning.
Oh boy.
And at one point she was, enjoying herself and ended up getting a lap dance. And that's where I end the story.
Perfect. My craziest / oh my God moment. I got to bring it up because if I don't say this one, I'll get eaten alive. So Otis is local to Superior, Wisconsin, where I am. And I happen to.
Isn't he?
What's that?
He's in the room with you right now, isn't he?
God, I wish I could get him to sign my Money in the Bank briefcase. But
sign my beard.
Yeah, I went to a restaurant and he happened to be there. And I finally worked up the courage to go and ask to get the briefcase signed, because that's the ultimate goal. Because he is local. I wanted to get it, before he's, the huge megastar that he is. Randy, that's right. He's a megastar. And I get up I finally get my composure. I go do it, and I crash his mom's birthday party. So
Oh wow, well
I felt
done.
like such an idiot, a tool, the worst fan in the world, because I know like not to bother them in that
Yeah,
sense. But for some reason, I was like, this is the only moment I'm going to have.
how
And
dare
it
you?
probably will be the only moment I ever have again because I'm sure he's got a restraining order against me. So,
Probably, yeah, probably.
but it's nice that I know one of his good friends from growing up. So maybe one day him and I can just have a beer, talk about it, and then maybe get it signed.
There you go. There you go.
If
It'll
not, I
happen.
have probably about 50 autographed cards of his and other
Nice.
merchandise. So
Nice. He's good people. Otis, he'll come around. He'll forgive you eventually.
yeah, he's definitely, from what I hear, pretty cool guy. A lot of people went to school with him. A lot of people grew up with him. So I mean, that's a good sign. So, is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to add? Any final comments here before we get you out of here?
You did ask about merchandise. If there was ahead of time off air, you'd mentioned
Mhm.
about like collectibles or something, that stands out. And I did think of a couple, but I made sure to definitely grab one
Okay.
that I wanted to show off because one, the item itself is ridiculous, but then the fact that it's signed is even better.
Oh, okay. I'm
So
excited.
in the Attitude Era, obviously merchandising in the late '90s, early 2000s was everywhere. They
Mhm.
put Stone Cold and The Rock and DX and NWO on everything. And WWE even released a series of like dress clothes that people probably don't realize. Like they weren't big, but the biggest item, I guess, were they had a series of 4 ties, neckties.
Oh, okay.
And I think there was a Stone Cold, Undertaker, I think a DX, and maybe Shawn Michaels was like, I don't remember who the last one was. I only got one, and it was the Undertaker,
Oh,
which, as you see, I even still got the damn tags on it. All right.
that's great.
My dad got this for me, knowing that, job interviews or something, but who's going to wear an Undertaker tie to a job interview? And then if you look at it, this is like the worst picture of the Undertaker possible.
Yeah, that literally looks Mortal Kombat-ish.
Like it's not even a good picture of him. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying like it's flattering or not flat. It's just like of all the ties to wear, this would be last on the list probably. But for some reason I hung on to it because
Mhm.
like in my mind, an Undertaker tie feels like it could be unique one day.
Mhm.
And that's exactly it. So Undertaker now makes a lot of these appearances and he does these talks, but around 2014, 2015, he made very few public appearances.
Yep.
And he only worked with Wizard World via WWE at that
Yep.
time. And so at every show, there was a competition, not official competition, but like a behind the scenes for us employees to see who would bring the most unique item for Undertaker to sign. And I never got to be there for the reactions because I'm working
Yep.
elsewhere. But one of the people that would work with Undertaker said that of all the appearances, this one won the competition. That he completely forgot they made him. And like he just starts laughing. Undertaker just starts laughing and just looking at it like, why the hell they put me on a tie? Why would they do such a thing? And I don't know how well you can see the signature, but
Oh,
there's
thumbs are pretty good. Yep.
obviously that's the fake one, but this is the real one from 2015 here. So
Nice.
I still hold on to it, still got the tags. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm never going to wear it as a necktie, but
All right.
yeah. So that's a unique item that I'm very thankful I held on to over the decades.
That is definitely something I did not expect to see, let
Uh-uh.
alone even if it wasn't signed.
Right.
So I'm sure everybody in the who watches is probably screaming, "You got to be buried in that thing," because that's what I thought. Like that would be the ultimate, Undertaker-esque thing to do in your final passing.
That's
That's
an
just me
idea. I'll
being,
keep that in mind. Should
so,
I plan my own death? Yes.
put it in the will. No one gets the autograph.
I like that. I do like that.
So, but Alrighty, Mo. It's been a pleasure to have you on here. We got to get you on for episode of Show Me the Collectibles, because as you can see behind you, you have tons of collectibles. And we got to get you on here for another part 2. We can dive in more to the cons, and those stories would be great. Now that we have this relationship here, so
we're waiting. Thank you for having me as a guest. And if you don't mind me plugging, at Mo Lightning, MO Lightning, one word, lowercase, everywhere. Follow me.
Perfect. And we'll get some of that stuff from you, and I can throw that in the comment section when we post this on our Facebook. As I like to say, we'll kick you out of here. We'll chat in the lounge quick, and then I'll just plug my sponsors. So, again, appreciate you coming on, Mo.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is another episode of Friends of the Squared Circle. I'm your host, Crander Q, a.k.a. my real name. Now, before we go, let's just plug those sponsors one last time here. Give a huge shout out to Darren Corbin. You can follow Darren on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Yes, Darren Corbin is also on TikTok there, as you can see. Another great way to support Darren and what he does is at patreon.com/Darren Corbin. Give him a like and follow on those socials, as well as joining that Patreon starting out at just $1. Huge shout out to Superior Creations for all my custom tumbler needs. As you can see, we got Eric Cannon, Darren Corbin there, and Joey and Sierra got their custom tumblers at the last wrestling show. We're going to continue to give those out, make more friends for us here at Friends of the Squared Circle. You can find Superior Creations at facebook.com/Superior Creations MN for all your custom tumbler needs, as well as check out the boys at 13 cards, subject to change there. You got Leroy with his second place beard, Jesse and Zach. Give them a like on all social media there as well. And if you ever want to be a guest on an upcoming episode, you can find me at Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and our email there if you want to be a guest on Friends of the Squared Circle, as well as Show Me the Collectibles. Hit us up. We're always looking for new friends. And as always, it's your boy, Crander Q. Crander Q out.